Hey everybody, old school comic books. Okay, this time we're going to have another random comic book review. This is Ms. Mystic #1 from Pacific Comics with art and story by Neal Adams. Okay, so now Pacific Comics. Oh, I should probably say this is from 1982, I believe. Now, Pacific Comics was basically this independent comic company that came out in the early '80s. They went out of business around the mid '80s or so, and I think it was mostly just over like I don't know business contracts and stuff like that, like them not getting paid by distributors and that type of thing, you know. But during the early '80s, they came out and they were one of the first companies to actually pay royalties to the artists and writers and let them, keep the copyrights on the characters and whatnot. I believe it was right. It might have been right at the time that DC first started doing the royalty program, and then Marvel started doing the royalty program. But like I said, Pacific had the added incentive of the artist, holding on to their copyrights and trademarks to their characters. So they immediately were able to get Jack Kirby on board, Mike Grell, of course, Neal Adams, and I think it kind of helped Marvel and DC come up with new contracts and things. I'm sure it was an incentive for Marvel to do the Epic line of comics, you know. So there you go. On the inside here, we actually have an editorial here from Dave Scroggy, who was the president of the company. And here, let's see what he says. He's like, "Dear readers, Ms. Mystic has arrived. This comic you hold in your hands is one of the most eagerly awaited direct sales titles ever published. It heralds the active return to comics of one of all-time greats, Neal Adams. Blah 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 blah. This opinion is borne out by a landslide of advance orders by dealers. Thank you one and all. As many of you know, Ms. Mystic is being sold exclusively to the direct sales market. This means they can be found in specialty shops such as comic book stores, science fiction bookstores, and some fantasy gaming shops. For the most part, they are not currently found in regular newsstands, drugstores, or convenience stores like 7-Eleven. While this limits their availability to some degree, we feel that the booming direct sales market will continue to expand in the future. We encourage you to spread the word to potential buyers who may not have seen our comics." And it goes on. We welcome these. Oh yeah, there have recently been announcements of several new independent comic book publishers who are creating comics for the direct sales market. We welcome these independents who are sure to enrich the state of the graphic story in America. And so that was a kind of an interesting look uh, at where the comic book market was at the time, because this was kind of at the beginning, or how things sort of started transitioning from being sold, 7-Eleven, newsstands, drugstores, stuff like that, and becoming more oriented towards, the comic book shops and things. And yeah, this is 1982. It says it right here. Okay, so let's look at the comic itself. So we get Miss Mystic, and here she is. She's just sort of kind of floating around in space or whatever. And then we cut to the scene with these people in a van, and they're basically researchers or scientists who are going around, driving around in a van, and their thing is they're there to investigate curious. What's the word I'm looking for? These things having to do with pollution and whatnot, and strange things are happening. You see birds falling out of the sky. You see deer vomiting. Here's a little kid getting sick. So they're trying to find out what's going on, and they find out it's the cause of this factory here. And it's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. And the factory doesn't seem to be doing anything other than making pollution. It doesn't even seem to be making any sort of products or anything. And so they come and say, hey, let us in. We're from the government. We want to investigate what's going on there. And a big gun comes out and starts shooting at them. So they fall back, and then you find out that the van has all this kind of tech here. Look, they bring up a little shield. And their big guy kind of shoots out the laser cannon or whatever it is. And they get in their little hovercraft. And they go flying at the factory again. And then outside comes these robots. They're on some kind of unicycle or something. And the guy's like, damn, 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 damn. And then, ka-chow! The robot swats the guy down. Meanwhile, Ms. Mystic is kind of still floating around in space or wherever she's at, limbo. And they decide that what's going on, before I give it away, they decide what's going on is there's some sort of psychic energy being emitted from the from the factory, right? So what they decide is they have to gear up their machines, right? And I don't even know what this gizmo is really supposed to be doing other than countering the psychic energy. From the countering the psychic energy, it causes some sort of interdimensional flux. And then out pops Ms. Mystic. And only now, all of a sudden, she's got a sword and she's got some clothes on. So here's the robots are still coming at them. She's there. She's facing off against the robots. Okay. And then there's some big fight there. Chow. Bingo. And there's her magic sword. Fa-boom. And then she makes friends with the scientist guys. She explains that she's able to draw her powers from the earth. And they decide they're just going to team up and take on the evil factory. Right? So they break in. Okay. And meanwhile, the old guy kind of explains what their deal is. They're scientists who've been appointed by the government to go around and investigate strange circumstances and things having to do with pollution. They are the Science Investigation Agency. And then here comes some guys, some burly workers, but they decide the workers are actually being mind controlled. So Ms. Mystic flies up and, I don't know, destroys some thing here. It's really not clear what that is, but she clears it, and the guys kind of snap to. And so then she comes back and she starts describing her origin, and she's actually a 300-year-old witch. So this is back during the times of the Salem witch trials, right? She actually was a witch, and she would go around healing people, but townsfolk didn't really like that, and they tried to burn her at the stake. And she somehow used her powers to fly out into limbo, and she was trapped there until about an hour ago, where the science research team used their gizmos, causing that psychic feedback or whatever that freed her. Okay, so meanwhile, the gang is still trying to figure out what to do about the evil factory that's causing pollution, and she gets jumped by this guy who is the foreman. You see, he's a big construction worker flying around on a couple of steel girders as if they were skis or something. But what happens is, we think Ms. Mystic is knocked out, but she's still working her mojo, and she gets up and says "Hiya," and knocks out the foreman. And when the guy's helmet falls off, he kind of snaps to, but then Ms. Mystic faints, and is to be continued. Now there's a little backup story here by Chris Miller. It says, Tales from the Zed Rescue Rhapsody. There are no words here, but I guess this is some sort of fantasy setting. So what we have is, there's a little fairy, I don't even know if she's a fairy princess, she's just got a nude fairy flying around. And then an ogre sees her and grabs her. And then, I guess this is Zed. Here's to say help. And he wakes up. So he goes running over to help. And what happens is, the ogre's too big, so instead of fighting the ogre, he plays his flute. And the music distracts the ogre, and the ogre starts getting into it and starts dancing around. Oh my. And then what happens is, the ogre grabs the old guy and starts dancing around with him. But Zed drops his flute, and so the music stops. And then the ogre flings Zed out into the air or whatever. To be continued. Okay. All right. So, some other interesting things in here. You kind of see some of the comics that that Pacific was publishing at the time. There's an ad here for first couple of Jack Kirby things: Silver Star, Captain Victory, right? Early Gru. And what else here? We also have, I don't think it was the first appearance. I think it was the first full issue of Dave Stevens' The Rocketeer. And I think this character here is Missy Man by Steve Ditko. Okay. And what's this? Oh, Twisted Tales. I have this issue somewhere, which was a horror comic. This is, I don't know if anybody can tell, but that's a Richard Corbin illustration right there. But okay, so it's a pretty fun issue. Not great writing, and some of the storytelling is kind of confusing a little bit, because you're not always you can sort of tell what's. I mean, you know what's going on just from reading the issue, but sometimes the actual, I guess, image to image storytelling is a little bit confusing. Um, but it's pretty interesting. It's pretty dated. It's very much the type of thing that would have come out in like the mid '70s or whatever. Pollution or whatever. It really feels like the type of thing that like that early '70s Green Lantern type thing of look at us do some relevant topics, relevant issues or whatever. But that's fine. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it. But all in all, it's a pretty fun issue, and I think when Pacific went out of business, I think some of the stuff they were publishing went to Eclipse, and I think a few other people went to First Comics, which were a couple other independent companies that were around at the time that ended up going out of business maybe 10 years later. So, but yeah. So here we go. Ms. Mystic, 1982, by Neal Adams, Pacific Comics. Okay, great. Thanks for listening, and everybody have a great day.